So congratulations, Felicitación, to get an award or achievement award for cinematography in the country that created cinema. How do you feel?
To be recognized and be honored like this is sort of amazing. Your work is validated in some way.
Oh, you just only got an Oscar and a BAFTA.
You know, yeah, there's that. But, you know, I think certainly for me, I'm just sort of critical always of my own work. I sort of feel, yeah, you sort of feel like, is it good enough? You know, could it be better?
So you grew up in Australia when you were 8. You went to South Africa. You became interested in photography by your father.
My mum is South African. My dad was Australian. So growing up in Cape Town, yeah, my dad was a dentist, but you know, his real passion was photography. In another life, he would have chosen the arts, you know, but he was a man, you know, in the 1950s where you sort of had to have a real job. And so I sort of got into photography in my teens.
Right now, when you're looking back over what you've done, have you seen it? What line do you see?
As I started to go through this process and sort of revisit these projects, you know, I think what became really significant is, you know, are the people I've sort of worked with along the way. You know, I look at my first film with Jane Campion.
God.
Yeah, and even going back to my very, very first film that I shot, my very first feature, I was like 23. But it was an amazing experience, and that film ended up here in Cannes.
Walking the Croisette in my slightly too large rented tuxedo, you know, just wide-eyed and, you know, with a heart full of dreams.
I remember seeing an interview with Jane. It always comes back to me. She said, at some point, she said to herself, but what if I really tried?
I think that's all of what this is, you know. I think with anything, it's like, okay, yeah, I could do this. You know, what we think we can do, because there's still today, every movie I do, I'm venturing into stuff I haven't done before, you know. So I think you've just got to have that attitude that, you know what, fine, I'll figure it out.
Do it.
And you know what, you'll have people around you. I could do this, and what if I actually really did this?
So, as most people will know, the Memoirs of a Geisha, Dion got a $1 million silk covered this constructed town. How did that happen?
The structure of the book is really in season, and it's sort of about this sort of growth and renewal and the rebirth, you know, in terms of this character. So the decision was made to shoot the film in California, in LA, and there are no seasons in LA.
Oh no, yeah, you have to create them.
So that became like, how are we going to tell the story that takes place in seasonally when we are just literally sitting under the blaring sun all day long?
So it was snowing, but you were really hot, right?
So yeah, so it was like, okay, well, if we could sort of cover a little bit like what's happening over there. It was almost 2 football fields in size, and no one had ever built a silk on that scale. So we went into sort of engineering, and we figured out how to do it, and then that price tag came back. You can do it, but it's going to cost $1 million. I had to go to a meeting with the head of production at Sony Studios and sit across his desk, and he's like, there's got to be another way to do this. You know, we can't spend $1 million. And I'm like, there's no other way to do it. And he says, okay, we'll spend the money, but you've got to guarantee that it's going to work.
Can't guarantee, you can just try it.
Sure.
Oh yeah, which is what I noticed also, that you're quite, I guess maybe it's the Australian side, I don't know much about South African qualities, but of, you know, faking till you're making it. That's kind of it. What about the helicopter? Tell me about the helicopter.
Yeah, well, look, I think in any, I think it's in any business, but maybe specifically in the film business, it's sort of a confidence game. You know, you've got to convince people that you can do it, and sometimes you have to say, I have done it. And
For
yes,
example?
there's a story. So, you know, I was offered this sort of big sort of music video, and was one of the guys from Crowded House who was doing a solo album, and I was actually still in film school, and it was this sort of great opportunity, paying job, I was shooting in, all through the South Island, and one of the questions was, have you shot aerials before? Have you? All the time. Of course, I'd never been up in a helicopter in my life. I'm up there and I realize I'm getting so sick. So I figured then I get motion sick in helicopters, which you're only going to know once you get up in a helicopter. So there I was swooping, doing all these moves, and I'm just like, we finally sort of get the last shot. I'm like, I'm going to throw up. And the pilot just like looks at me, I'm sitting opposite him. It just controls everyone, And he looks at me just in a dead panic. And so I was wearing a baseball hat, and I just sort of took it off, put it in my lap, and just like, and he landed in 15 seconds. He literally dropped down on a riverbed and got me out.
Don't ruin my helicopter, man. I don't care what you shoot.
I'm very thankful for the fact that I at least the forethought to not vomit on his helicopter. But yeah, sometimes there will be consequences for for faking your abilities.
But I guess it's also you just being creative and looking. You wouldn't have that confidence unless you really wanted to. You had a vision.
Yeah.
And how do you see it as helping the development of your work, or how much it needs to be human emotion and feeling?
What we're trying to do is ultimately communicate our emotions to express the human condition in all the work we do. So to sort of think that AI will just simply take over that process, I don't really agree with that. But I do recognize that we've lifted the lid, but it's here, and the technology is available, and we do need, as artists, as filmmakers, we need to understand it. We need to harness that. We are storytellers, as a species, and I think we've been storytellers for as long as we've been in, two people have been together around a fire, So I think that's inherent in us. And with AI and with technology, yes, it's going to change how we make movies. It's going to change how we tell stories. But we need to sort of lead that, that change.
Why do you tell stories?
Look, I think it's just to try and understand life better. I think, to try and understand each other better. For me, whether it's science fiction or a musical or whatever it is, at the very sort of core, I think we're just trying to understand we're flawed, we're flawed human beings, all of us. And I think we struggle to be good, and I think sometimes that's maybe part of the point of, of our journey. I mean, I think of going back to Jane and thinking about Holy Smoke, about a movie that, yes, it's about a sort of complicated dynamics between men and women and the sort of power plays. But in the end, there's a moment in the film where, Harvey Keitel's character, writes, be kind on Kate Winslet's head. In some ways, as complicated as the politics of that movie were, that is really at its core the message. It's like, at the very least, we can be kind to each other, through all of the complexities. And sometimes, films, stories, not all of them, but there is, I think we're looking for a message like that when we read stories.
Well, félicitations, congratulations, and yeah, to receive this acknowledgement in the country that invented cinema is really something, and I'm sure that people are proud of you. Congratulations.
Oh, thank you very much. Perfect.
I think Popeye is shooting from over there because it must be pretty nerve-wracking shooting the best cinematographer in the world.
There we go.
Yeah.